All right, so on this week's Rock and Roll Ghost podcast, we have Will Staples, filmmaker and author. His new book, Animals, is coming out in March. What's the exact date on that?
March 30th.
March 30th, okay. And then he's also one of the writers on the Amazon feature Tom Clancy's Without Remorse, starring, oh my God, why am I, Michael B. Jordan. Did I get that right? Why am I blanking on his name?
Nailed it.
Because I was like, no, wait, that doesn't sound right. And I'm sitting there thinking about Michael Jordan, and for a second, yeah, it's Michael B. Jordan is in Tom Clancy's Without Fears, co-written by Will Staples and Taylor Sheridan, right?
Yeah. Taylor's the other credited writer on it.
Okay. Well, first off, how are things where you're at? What area of the country are you in?
I'm in LA in the Venice area, so
Okay.
it's a little hectic over here, but no power outages and no snow, so can't complain.
Yeah, that's good.
How about you? Where are you guys based?
I'm outside of Chicago.
Okay.
Lots of snow, but power, because we can deal with it. Because we have the ability to withstand things like snow. And we also are part of the grid, unlike Texas, unfortunately, which apparently decided they didn't need anybody else's help with anything. That's a side thing. What was I going to add? Well, first, let's talk about the book. This is your first book, did you say?
Yeah, it was my first book. I had never set out to write a book, and then this was just one that I felt like I had to get out of me. Years ago, I had been approached by a production company, Appian Way, that's Leonardo DiCaprio's company, about developing a movie set in the world of animal trafficking for Leonardo and Tom Hardy and Tobey Maguire starring. Mm-hmm. And so I developed that at Warner Brothers as a feature film. And then while we were sort of in a holding pattern, waiting to see how and when the movie might come together, I decided to go and concurrently rebuild it as a novel as well. So got partnered with Warner Brothers, got the book rights back, and then wrote the novel and set it up. It was one of those projects where you put so much of yourself into it that you just want to find a way to get the story out into the world. With that one, I traveled to like 7 different countries and had some fairly harrowing experiences learning about animal trafficking. It was just one of these things that it's like animals, along with drugs and guns and human trafficking, are one of the largest illicit markets in the world. Yet, because it's not a law enforcement priority, nobody knows anything about it. So you ask the man on the street, what do you know about animal trafficking? They're going to say, oh, I saw about sad animals in Africa are being killed and somehow their parts end up on the street in Asia. But it doesn't really occur to people that the gap between Asia and Africa, both geographically and culturally, is massive, yet somehow things are moving. So it's like if all you knew about cocaine was that it was grown by farmers in Bolivia and Colombia, and all of a sudden it's in LA and New York magically, you had no idea about the Mexican cartels. And so, the book is really exposing the criminal syndicates and the regions where trafficking is most prevalent. And it was all the areas that I went to during the research trip, doing black market buys and getting DNA tests to see how product was moving and stuff like that. So, it was just one that I purely did because I care about the issue. All the money from the book is going to animal charities.
Oh, wow.
So, but yeah, it's been a fun one. It was a fun experience.
Yeah. Well, now I have so many questions. Number one, what year did you first get approached to just kind of start looking into this idea?
So it was really a random way that it came about. So in 2015, I was working on a mercenary story for Ben Affleck set in Eastern Congo. And as part of my research, I was out at the shooting range with a bunch of SEAL buddies. And we saw this dude at the shooting range covered in tats wearing shorts and flip-flops. And I was like, that guy is the most dangerous guy here, right? Who's the guy in shorts and flip-flops at the shooting range? And so met the dude. He was this Australian guy who had just founded the International Anti-Poaching Foundation. Uh-huh. And we ended up becoming friends immediately. And he ended up staying at my house and stuff like that. And then he had heard that the DiCaprio's company was looking at doing an animal trafficking story, and he wanted to talk to them to see if there's any way he could support the cause, not like as a consultant or anything, but just offer his knowledge and whatever. And so I introduced him, and then that became one of those sort of circular referrals where then they approached me and said, hey, actually, you know, we don't have a writer for this thing. We just have a mandate to tell a story in this world. You know, would you be interested in telling it? And so then they hired me, and it became readily apparent that very few people know how animals are trafficked. And so then it became this massive odyssey of interviewing hundreds of people and then going on this giant like world tour trip to learn about it, because I didn't want to write some like BS thing that wasn't authentic. Because what's the point of exposing an issue if you're exposing like a fictional take on the issue? And so, so I just went deep down that rabbit hole, and ever since then have been sort of involved in that issue in various ways and have a lot of contacts and friends in that world. And so that was sort of part of it, was like, okay, if I write the book, we could use that to raise not just awareness, but money for these nonprofits that like most of the nonprofits doing like the great work on the ground, or, you know, they're getting by on like an oily rag and nothing else, you know? So to be able to help out, you know, in my little Hollywood ways.
Yeah. Well, that's the way how you got to this is fascinating. So I take it that Congo Ben Affleck film hasn't really moved forward since.
Well, it's in a holding pattern, and then you know, he went off and made Triple Frontier around like 2017 or 18, and you know, that's obviously you know, sort of similar aesthetic and character. So I think that, you know, it probably, you know, precludes both of those projects from existing in the same world.
Yeah. I get that. And a side question. So with something like that, with something like the Ben Affleck Congo film, where you're working on it, you obviously came up with at least one draft.
Yeah, a couple. Okay. And you don't have to answer this. I'm just curious how this works. Do you get paid at all if nothing happens to it? Yeah, so the way Hollywood deals for writers are typically structured are you get paid X to write, usually it's a 2-draft deal. So say it's $100 for 2 drafts, $60 for the first, $40 for the second. And then you'll have a bonus that's usually comparable to that total amount of money that's your production bonus if the movie gets made. Gotcha. So that's all. Whenever you're taking on a project, it's like, yes, it would be great to see the production bonus, but the reality is you only count on the guaranteed money, because that's what you're, you know, paying the rent with. And so right. No, I've talked to other filmmakers, other writers, and I know one guy that you know has done probably more favors than he wished he had, you know, for free. And he's at a point where he said, I'm not doing that stuff anymore. And I'm sure maybe you've been in that position before, maybe when you're first coming up or something. But that was just a curious question I had, because, you know, like you said, I mean, it's been 5-6 years since you started working on that one. And then that led you to the film, which is now a book. How did you get the rights to do a book? How did you manage? I mean, without getting it mired in deep? Yeah. I mean, it was pretty interesting. It was actually easier than I expected. You know, I just sort of had this crazy idea. And the other thing is, I remember I was in this area called Special Region 4 in Myanmar that was like, it's controlled by a warlord named Se Lin, and like they don't allow any journalists or anybody there. And I was there in this like city that doesn't exist as far as the world's concerned, seeing like endangered animals everywhere. And I just started writing about the city, and I realized that this was stuff that would never be on screen, but if I was writing a book, it's sort of like how it would live on the page. And I was like, yeah, whatever, but I'm not a book writer, so, you know, let's keep that journal somewhere else. And then eventually, you know, when it looked like the movie might not happen as quickly as I wanted it to, and I really urgently wanted to get the information out there, because it's like every day, you know, these horrible things are happening. That was when I reached out to Warner's and I said, look, you know, would you be open to me writing it as a book, and DiCaprio's company as well? And they were both supportive, because, you know, as far as they were concerned, obviously if the book is successful, they still own the film and television rights. So then it's just more valuable. So there's really no downside for them, you know, given that it wasn't going to negatively impact the development of the film, and the book rights didn't have any value at that time.
Right.
So they were really supportive, and they all knew that the reason any of us had gotten involved in the project was to try and, spread the word about an issue that a lot of us cared about. And so everybody was really supportive on that one. I mean, I think if I was trying to get the free book rights to the James Bond series, that'd probably be a little different, but
yeah. Yeah, it's a rare moment of altruism on the part of a studio and a big company. So that's interesting. What was it? Who's actually putting it out?
The book, it's coming from Blackstone Publishing.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're like really big with the audiobook stuff. So they're doing the audiobook right now, and I think that'll be a day and date release. And so yeah, it's exciting. But to your earlier point about the movie stuff, I mean, when movie writers in particular, it's like you sort of have to expect that if you're lucky, you have a 1-to-10 ratio of the things that you write that actually get made,
That would be considered very lucky, I think, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I've got like 2 movies and a book all coming out in a 6-month period, whereas like for years, working on stuff where you either don't end up getting any credit or just nothing, or they just like the projects die a withering death for reasons outside your control.
Right. Yeah, I noticed that you've got a lot of stuff listed in your I'm on IMDb Pro, and they've got a lot of future stuff. I thought I saw something about King Tut in there. I don't know how much of it is accurate, but that's usually the divide between the top part where like development is, and then the bottom part is what actually got made. So like if somebody were able to actually track everything that somebody was supposedly in development on, they could work out that ratio for themselves, probably for each writer.
Oh yeah, I've got at least a good 20 movie projects that are in development.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I booked. I mean, King Tut I booked in 2003.
Wow.
And I know that over the years, different writers have come on and off that. And that sort of thing. And even like it's interesting working on Without Remorse, because that's one where the first drafts of that script were being developed in the 90s, and then I guess about a year ago, it guess maybe 2 or so years ago now, there was a renewed energy with it when Michael B. Jordan came on board and Taylor Sheridan came on and rebooted things creatively on the direction they were taking it. And then, then the movie goes into production, and then all the other people who pass through later in the process. And so, some of these end up being these like marathon relay races, and we're all just carrying the baton for our portion of the race.
Right. So how did that work out? Did Taylor start working on it and then you took over? How did that happen?
Yeah, I mean, typically it's like you don't really get into sort of exactly who did what. His involvement predated my involvement.
Okay.
And, the way the Guild assigns credit is, they have a little arbitration, and then anybody who on an adaptation like that reaches a 33% threshold for their contributions to the film gets their name on the movie. And so Taylor and I were the ones who ended up getting credited. But, I mean, there were a ton of, like, amazing writers who came through and did work on it. And a lot of them knew they weren't going to get credit because they'd be coming in for, like, a few weeks while it was in production to try and enhance this or that. So yeah, it was definitely, that one was a team sport, but I've seen the cut. I'm really excited about the movie.
That's one of the weirdest things, like, not to act like I'm doing anything special, but I met a filmmaker a few years ago who encouraged me to finally go back to, I'd written a bunch of stuff in high school and after high school and stuff, and I never finished a screenplay. He kind of encouraged me to finish one, and I'm still trying to finish it. And, just to finish one. I don't know if anything will ever happen and blah, blah, blah. But I just can't imagine like putting all of that kind of work into it and then, not like, I don't know. I don't know how, I guess it's so different for screenwriters and more even than TV, because TV usually, the writers that are on the show get their credit, or their staff writers or whatever.
Sometimes.
Movies could be like this weird orgy of people that have like all jumped in the jacuzzi at one time or another.
Yes.
And then they just sit there and they figure out how to go about listing a credit, for credits. And it's so bizarre. And I don't know, does that mess with your mind ever?
Yeah, it's a little challenging when you're trying to explain to the relatives at home, like, wait a minute, we saw that you were hired to work on a Mission Impossible movie, but your name's not on the movie, and you're like, oh, I came in for 3 weeks. It was like I was just there to help out. Like it was a time when the sort of stuff that I do was very useful to them in the process, but like there was no version where I had written 33% of a movie or something,
Right.
And I've had other situations where you're brought in, like I've been brought in on TV to do reshoots on a whole season of TV, and that's like all uncredited, whatever. And so
really,
it's it's, if you want to be famous, being a writer is not the way to do it. So that's not a great motivation. I think the other thing that you sort of have to view a lot of things you do as the sand mandalas, where it's you make it and then it gets swept away. And so, you put everything you have into writing the best scripts you can. And then, for some of them, it's 7 people read them between the production company and the studio. And then you're just waiting for that A-list star that's attached to be available. And then maybe they're just not. And so, the funniest analogy, or not funniest, but probably most appropriate I've heard was, a writer referring to it, it's sort of having projects are a little bit like having foster kids, right? It's you take them in, you give them everything you've got, pour your love into them, and then they go and then they go to their next family, and you can't really half-ass it when it's your turn,
Yeah, that makes sense.
But we get paid to sit around in our pajamas and make
shit. That is the key point, and which is cool. It's just I can imagine when you're first starting, that having that be the reality at first, maybe is a blast of cold water in your face, perhaps.
Yeah, I guess it depends on what you're doing it for. If you're doing it for recognition, you're going to be sorely disappointed. But I've always loved learning and adventure, and so I tend to pick projects that are going to allow me to go down rabbit holes that are fun. So it's this job has let me I've been to the North Pole with the Navy on nuclear submarine exercises, and vehicle ops with ex-Delta Force people doing live fire drive-by shootings in Kentucky, and things like that, where it's never in a million years that I think that I get to do a lot of the fun things you get to do. Did a backseat on an F-16 summer before last doing an 80-minute bombing mission, and so at the time that was I guess what you call type 2 fun. After the fact it was fantastic, but 80 minutes of throwing up was but yeah, so it's fun. I love that aspect of the job. It's always been a huge part of it for me, is and it also I think for the types of projects that I get hired on, people are looking for that verisimilitude, with or without remorse. You don't want somebody writing Michael B. Jordan as a SEAL Team 6 member who doesn't have extensive experience with people from that community and who knows how to write that sort of rhythm and intensity and stuff,
Yeah. What I was thinking is about how most writers, and perhaps your ego is better than most writers, think that everything they write is so precious and important, and that it's hard for them. I didn't realize until recently. It's odd that we were talking about Ben Affleck, because he's doing this, the book about the making of Chinatown, and you realize how. Not that it's not the Emperor with no clothes, but Robert Towne kind of didn't put out the majestic screenplay everyone has always said he did. According to the book, a lot of it was rewritten and condensed because he could never figure out how to end the damn thing, and he went on and on about all sorts of other things that were straying from the story. And what's his name? Oh my God.
Polanski,
yeah. Polanski had to just basically take it, whittle it down and put an end to it, and finally get it ready to shoot, or else they would have never made the movie. And I think that's fascinating, because that's the screenplay everybody says is perfect.
Yeah, it's a little bit like Casablanca, right? Which I think was 3 different sets of writers or something who passed through and wrote 3 different sections. It somehow feels like one of the most cohesive narratives ever, put to film. It's there's something liberating about when you're brought on to a project that predates you, because okay, I'm just here to do the best I can and move the ball as far downfield as I can with my time. Right. And the win is doing the good work, not necessarily looking on screen at the end of the day and seeing every word you wrote or something. Yeah. The other thing is once you've written for a while and seen how things get translated on screen. Sometimes there's that okay scene that like a great actor makes you look really good, and then sometimes there's that scene where you're like, God, it was so brilliant when I wrote it. I'm such a genius, and then like it just doesn't play on screen. And of course, it's everybody else's fault except for your own. But you know, those sort of things, then they have to get cut from the movie because it's like it just didn't work.
It falls
all.
to the ground with a thud.
Yeah, totally. And so, you know, there are those things, you know, where like, you know, you always write these with the most, you know, high-end nuanced performance in mind. And, you know, you don't always get that. And so that old cliche that a movie's, you know, story is told 3 times, like, you know, once by the writer, once by the director, and then a 3rd time by the editor. It's like, it's so true. And so you can't really look at like, all you can control is this, what's on the page. And so you sort of do your best, but then, once you have no control after that, it's very limiting.
It's almost like sending your kid off to college, you know, or you had a good example with foster children. I mean, it's just like, dude, you can just do the best with what you have, and you have to check your ego at the door and move on to the next thing. And hopefully you have a next thing right away, and you just keep moving. You just like a shark, you don't stop.
Yeah, I mean, I've always got like multiple things lined up. Like, you know, I've got 2 movie pitches and 4 TV shows, and my 2nd book that I'm working on right now, and I'm producing a documentary that's coming out this spring as well. So it's like always having a lot of things because you don't know what's going to activate when, and it also takes a little bit of the sting off when certain things stall out for whatever reason, knowing you have something that you're really excited about to jump back into.
Yeah. That's what I wanted to ask you. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Monterey, so like.
So you're California all the way through.
California, yeah. And then bounced around a bit and found my way down here in 2001.
Okay. What made you want to get into writing for entertainment?
I always loved movies growing up, and then went back east for college, and you know, it's one of those things where like when we were graduating, everybody's doing like consulting, banking, law school, medical school stuff. So I went and did investment banking in Silicon Valley for a year, and I was like, this is not for me. I'm not the dude for this. And so I just packed up a U-Haul and moved down to LA and was like, I want to do movie stuff. I don't know what that means, but you know, got a job fetching coffee. And then once I started to learn like what producers did, what studio execs and agents and writers did, and I saw what screenwriters did, I was like, oh, that's me. I want to do that. And so then just spent the next, period of time just trying to learn. I mean, the thing I had going for me is that I knew that I didn't know anything about writing. Like I hadn't taken any creative writing and screenwriting classes, anything like that. So I knew that I was terrible at it, and my only goal was to get better. And that's sort of still my attitude with it. So, it's funny, sort of circling back, you mentioned like the things being precious on the page. And it's like, as a screenwriter, you can also sort of get to the point where you always have the security of knowing that like you're ultimately not responsible for what ends up on the screen. Like it's sort of, it was genius when I wrote it, but when it ended up on the screen, I have no control. Whereas writing a book was a very interesting experience because I was like, man, I feel so exposed because every word choice in the book is my own. And there's no excuses for,
there's no hiding at all. Yeah.
It's like I have to wear every choice, like every, it was an interesting experience, and also I didn't realize how bad I was at screenwriting when I wrote my first couple of scripts, and only with hindsight that I know. And writing the book, I was really bad at the other things the first time I did them. I hope I'm not that bad the first time I'm doing this one.
Yeah. But your editors like it, so, and they're putting.
Yeah, the reviews were good. I mean, so far all the reviews have been phenomenal, which was like, and the first person I sent it to when I finished it was Jane Goodall. She read it.
Oh, wow.
She was effusive about it, and then offered to do a blurb about it. And then like Schwarzenegger did a little blurb for it that's on the jacket as well. And so,
cool.
It's like, the nice thing is, it seems to be well received by people, and I'm optimistic they'll be able to raise a little money with it and hopefully get the word out. I mean, the other thing is like I didn't want to write a book that was just for like animal people who already care about the issue. Like ideally, I want to write something that like would appeal to a broader audience. So hide the peas in the mashed potatoes a little bit. Like write a good thriller, a good crime thriller that ideally people come out of it and be like, oh, okay, like this is totally messed up, and how is nobody doing about this?
Yeah, definitely. That makes complete sense, honestly, because to the people that already believe. So
Yeah.
you don't need to convert. You convert the non-believers. That's just the same thing with religion or politics, I suppose.
Yeah, and nobody likes the preachy, Hollywood guy who has it all figured out and is letting you know how the world works and how you should think about things. My attitude is like, what are the interesting questions surrounding this issue? Lay out the questions in as truthful a way as possible, and then if people read the book and they're like, I still think it's cool to go trophy hunting, then that's totally their decision. The book doesn't tell you that that's good or bad. It just tells you here are the issues around trophy hunting. Here are the issues around horse racing. Here are the issues around all these things that you may not be thinking about, so that at least we're making a little bit more conscious choices about those things. Like, I'm not some crazy, militant.
You're not going to go throw blood on people or something, fake blood on people.
I mean, only on Halloween maybe, but yeah.
Well, I was thinking of like the PETA people. That
Yeah. I mean, it's all really complicated. It's like, if we start, we're all living in glass houses with this stuff, but it's like, I love the environment, but I drive a, car that guzzles gas and probably have a much larger carbon footprint than a lot of people. So, try and do your best.
But as you were saying, with what your intention was for the book is to bring awareness. The fact is, people's awareness 40, 50 years ago of our carbon footprint was nil.
Yeah.
People were talking about it, but it's only because of years of it being kind of hammered home. And we're all slow. Let's be honest. It's taking forever. And now we're getting to a position where I think people will get there because it's the generations like under me and probably even under you that are know what they need to do, and once they're in power, hopefully they don't make the same stupid mistakes everybody else did before them.
Yeah, I think also there are ways that there are certain issues that we're looking at like the wrong way, or like conventional wisdom. Like with the animal trafficking thing, one of the things that I found really fascinating going into it is that one of the biggest concerns people have about addressing the animal trafficking issue is like judgment about other cultures, and like, who are we to judge these other cultures for their beliefs or whatever. But the reality is, like, endangered wildlife has been banned from traditional Chinese medicine for years, and the primary use for like rhino horn and tiger parts isn't like medicine anymore. It's purely for luxury goods. It's like this whole from health to wealth movement with animal stuff. So it's like, do I have a problem judging somebody who was willing to have a rhino killed so they could have a bracelet? Not at all. Like, I'm happy to judge that person all day. Like, if the person I have trouble judging is the parent in Vietnam whose kid is dying of cancer, who's told by somebody in the cancer ward that if they give them $100 for rhino horn powder, it'll save their kid. And in reality, they're just being given ground up fingernails and their kid's gonna, not survive anyways. Like, that's a much messier thing where you're like, well, the real bad guys there are the criminal syndicates that are preying on vulnerable families who need healthcare, So it's like, it's one of these like multifaceted things where I think at least, if we know what's actually going on, then, we can at least address it. A lot like all these other social movements lately that are like getting, more amplification, and people are like, oh, okay, like I never thought about it that way.
Right. And then that's one of the things too, is that we're constantly learning and we're constantly being updated, let's say, by the resources available to us now, because honestly, until the last 20, 25 years, people didn't have the luxury of having everything at their fingertips.
Yeah.
And we still and that's caused its own problems in their own interesting way, as I've discussed on this show with other people. But the fact is, it's like, a lot of stuff just didn't reach a lot of people.
Yeah.
And still you do have the idea, that, I'm a guy trying to make ends meet in Pittsburgh, say, and, I don't have necessarily time to care whether or not, a rhino is getting taken for, Viagra-like substance in, China, which makes sense, but there's room to have compassion and thought, and it doesn't take much to put your name on a form, protesting it or sending a standard letter to your congressman or senator or whatever about it. It's like
Yeah.
little things.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you talk about the Golden Triangle and the broader sort of area in Southeast Asia, Vietnam, Laos, Myanmar, and then to a lesser extent, northern Thailand. These are areas where trafficking is frequently happening, like out in the open. Stuff that is illegal in those countries, illegal internationally, is being done with total impunity. And it's not a major source of tax revenue for the local governments and things like that. There's typically some corruption involved with like people's hands being greased to allow it to happen. But like if the United States government, for example, just leaned on these countries and said, hey, everybody knows this thing is happening here, just enforce the laws you have on the books 10% more, it would create like a huge reduction in the amount of animals being exploited. I mean, the tiger population is basically gone, and there's really no reason for it because it's not part of traditional Chinese medicine. And, these are all countries that could easily clean up their act. But the fact that I was able to go and get pictures of me being served tiger meat at a high-end casino and, get served tiger wine and be offered tiger parts, tiger skins, everything, all over the place. And I was, it was all DNA tested. We know exactly where it came from and everything. So whereas like if I was trying to do that, if I was trying to investigate arms dealing, I don't think I'd have as easy of a time finding the top arms dealers in the world, or like I probably wouldn't end up in a warehouse full of heroin if I was investigating narco trafficking very easily. So that was eye-opening,
Yeah, that is interesting. Just the fact that people aren't as worried because there's not as many repercussions. That's actually fascinating.
Yeah, there's also these places that people don't know exist, these little black hole regions that are in primarily Laos and Myanmar on the Chinese border, and also little pockets in Vietnam where like there are these regions that have managed to become black holes that don't exist for the rest of the world. And these are not like villages in the jungle. These are like full-on cities with casinos and things like that nobody's allowed in. There's no international oversight. So once you go to these places, everything illegal is out in the open, like, underage human trafficking, narcotics, animals, illegal gambling and money laundering operations. It's like practically just all laying in the street. I literally have pictures of me like picking up a pangolin off a table in the street. A pangolin is one of the rarest animals in the world. And it was just like outside a restaurant, anybody could grab it and take it into the restaurant and have the chef prepare it, And it wasn't like you had to know, like, knock, knock, slide the little thing in the door and know all the passwords and stuff. This was just like,
once you're in, you're in.
Yeah. And like to the point where like nobody questioned who I was because they would have no reason to think that anybody would ever come,
Yeah.
Like I just surrender my passport hours away and then get transported through the jungle to this city that doesn't exist,
Right. Blindfolded?
No, not blindfolded. But it was pretty hectic. I've got a nice mugshot to show for it and some other stuff.
Yeah. Wow. Man, that's.
But then you're like, well, I got to write the book if I got arrested. So.
Yeah. Wow, that is crazy. It's absolutely. I just trying to even think about like what was your jumping off point? How did you get from here to wherever your first point of origin was to investigate? I mean,
so there were two chapters to it. So there was the poaching side, which my buddy Damian Mander, who had founded the International Anti-Poaching Foundation, his organization was getting more and more traction. So while I was working on it, so he was very established down in like Mozambique and Zimbabwe and some other spots. And so he was sort of my guide for the South Africa Mozambique portion, and he knew all the ranges at Kruger. We went over into the poaching villages in Mozambique and did some undercover intelligence stuff there. But for the other piece where like nobody really knows about that stuff, Appian Way had told me, DiCaprio's company, we've had this guy reach out to us periodically who knows that Leo's thing is the tigers and he investigates tigers. You should if you want, we can put you in touch, but we can't vouch for the guy. We don't know anything about him. And so I started looking at these videos online by this guy, Carl Amon, and they were like, these low production value, sort of like hidden hip camera thing videos with like not a ton of views, but it was clear that Carl had seen stuff that nobody else had seen. And so I emailed him. I was like, hey, Carl, like, I was giving your info. I would love to learn more. And he's like, well, if you really want to learn more, I am going on like a big trip through all of Southeast Asia in like 2 or 3 weeks. And if you just can pay your way, you can crash with me. And paying my way was like a couple grand for like the whole thing. It was like, he's like flying by the seat of his pants on these trips. Yeah. But he has a whole network of local fixers who have everything lined up. And so I, without having ever met Carl, met him in Thailand. Then we went overland from there. And we went to a bunch of different countries and different places. And Carl is very fearless and willing to rattle cages that I would not have been willing to rattle. That I've been helping Carl produce his documentary, The Tiger Mafia, which has all of those factual findings that sort of underpin the narrative in the novel and the movie. So it's interesting. So Carl and I are still close friends, and he's an incredible, he is like a true believer, dying to get the world exposed to this issue. Obviously he's incredibly frustrated that like he puts all this energy and blood and sweat into it, and like the world community just seems to be like, whatever,
Yeah. What would you call Carl exactly? What would like be the word to sum him up as?
I guess you'd say conservationist. He's one of these guys who he'd been doing a lot of wildlife photography, and then as he saw more and more horrifying things, decided to start sort of doing like undercover stuff and documenting stuff. But this investigation of his is sort of like the Winchester Mystery House investigations. Like it keeps building and keeps building. And what started is like he wanted to investigate these 2 clouded leopards he saw on the street in Asia to be like, how did these clouded leopards get in this market? But then that like tentacled out into all these different things. And like his story is bonkers because Vishay Keo Savong is considered like the Pablo Escobar of trafficking. Nobody could ever get to him. There's like $1 million bounties on him. And like Carl would like arrange a meeting and sit down and do like a deal for animal parts with Vishay, so Carl's going there.
This is honestly a subject I've never really thought a whole lot of. I've thought about it, but I've never thought this deeply about it. And I guess just the idea of it is kind of blowing my mind.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. And also, ultimately the business of trafficking is the business of distribution, right? So once you build the distribution infrastructure, it's like, it's going to end up commingling with everything else illicit that people want to distribute, Yeah. So, the challenge with that issue is why should I care, right? And it's like, you can say, well, it's the money is supporting terrorism, the money is supporting other things. Kind of true, but it's really just like it orbits the same areas as those things. Yeah. I don't think that if you stopped Boko Haram from trafficking ivory that you would save anybody's life who would otherwise die. But, it really just comes down to like, what kind of world do we want to live in? Like, do we want to live in a world with animals? And, once you start taking out everything else on the food chain, at what point are we the next item on the menu? It's like, why should we care about them? Well, why should we care about us? Like,
right.
But it is, there are interesting questions too that come up that get more complex because like, as distasteful as I find canned hunting, like there are certain areas where the animals, like if you look at like forest elephants and things like that, it's very hard to have a viable tourism business to protect animals that are very elusive, right? Like forest elephants and other things. So there are certain places where they're like, well, these animals are all going to get killed unless we set up a hunting concession because that's the only economic way to make them viable.
Right.
Yeah. But then you're like, okay, but if somebody was like, the only way that we could have like people was to make them economically viable and hunt a portion of them.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound right. So, it's like, it's just really complicated. And I think, different people have different answers to that question. And I still go back and forth on some of these, like whether or not what the right thing is, Yeah.
Yeah. Like my stepdad's a hunter and he hunts deer for the most part. And it's mostly, because deer get overpopulated for the areas that they're in. And it's in its own way, it's helping things, and he uses the deer. So, he uses, as far as I know, every part he can possibly use.
Yeah.
So, that's the kind of hunting I guess morally and ethically I don't necessarily have a problem with. But yeah, when you get to just, you get to just some guy going out to the jungle and somebody putting a stunned, animal in front of them so he can shoot it. That really just ends up pissing me off. So
yeah, I've always found it interesting that we tolerate the killing of animals for pure entertainment, like when people aren't using the meat and stuff like that. Yeah. But if that same person that was going to shoot a lion in a canned hunting thing, we were told actually they're just going to go and like break the lion's legs and then leave, we'd be like, that's cruel and insane and whatever. But it's like somehow killing an animal is fine, but wounding and torturing animals like morally insane to us. And so, yeah,
I mean, because they're going to end up dying too. And
so it's just like, it's one of those things where, I mean, I wrote the book with people like your uncle and mine, like that he would read the book and not be like, this book is, he would read it and say, okay, this book is forcing me to think about these issues. And I've thought about them and I'm still comfortable with the fact that I'm using the meat. The book doesn't say like, you shouldn't eat meat or whatever. Although one of the first people to read the book emailed me afterwards and said that the second she finished it, she'd become a vegetarian because it made her think about her choices. And she realized that she couldn't justify certain choices she was making in her life. And I was like, that wasn't the goal with the book, but if that is where you land, that's cool too, So I just don't, I'm not the self-righteous guy who has all the answers. I right now happen to have all the questions.
Well, I mean, I think that's what I think that's what a writer's job normally is it's to ask questions. A lot of times it's never necessarily to have the answers.
Yeah.
It's to have ideas of what the answer may be, but I think a writer's job, maybe it comes down to the fact that I kind of started my way in from, like in a way like journalism.
Yeah.
Where it's like you have to remain, unbiased.
Yeah.
And above, like, you can't be involved in your story itself. You have to just tell it like it is and ask questions. And, I think and people want answers. Well, it's like, well, no, you have a mind. That's why, you do that. You actually figure it out for yourself. Somebody may read your book and say, well, I don't really have a problem with it. I don't know how they would probably get that idea based on probably your passion for basically being against it. But, but somebody could still make up their mind and say it doesn't bother me, but that's up to you. It's not up to the writer to make that decision for you.
No, it's true. And there, there's so many facets to the issue. It's like, I used to have a Kentucky Derby party every year. And then over the last few years, there have been like a lot of green curtains coming out and horses dying and stuff like that. And I'm like, I don't know, is this something I should be about? Or am I supporting something that maybe is against my values? And so like, that's, something I've had to sort of think about, like, where do I come down on that? And like the book touches on horse racing, and horse racing, has a history of, having some corruption, and doping stuff, and like people like doping horses with cobra venom and things like that to make them run harder and stuff. And so, there's all these like sort of little things where you're like, oh, if I actually think about it, maybe I am okay with it because for whatever reason. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, then obviously it's like not everything I do is like that. I mean, some of the stuff I do is like, shoot 'em up action sequence stuff where it's like,
right.
Hey, we need a way for this character to shoot their way out of a bar.
Right. Yeah. But when it comes down to it, if you're tackling a subject like this, you want to be serious. You don't want to be flippant. So that's completely understandable. You said you're already working on your second novel. Is that true? Is that what you said?
Yeah. So I just figured out what the second one's going to be. It's stemmed from like the research I did in Eastern Congo about sort of what's going on in that region and sort of the new face of neocolonialism. And it's a story about a manhunt for a warlord, but is not glorifying that. It's more like the way Unforgiven was about trying to take out these guys who hurt the prostitutes. Like, it's not about that, and so one of the things that sort of came up in researching that issue is that people think that the problem with that region in Africa and with a lot of parts of the world is chaos, and that it's allowing these people to do bad things. And it's actually the opposite. The chaos isn't the bug, it's the feature. And it's that we actively there are a lot of people actively have an interest in promoting chaos in these regions, ourselves included, because it allows us to advance our own agenda. And so, people are like, well, how has nobody gotten Joseph Kony? Like, that's so crazy. And it's like, well, the reason nobody's gotten Joseph Kony is because there's a lot of people, and this isn't like some conspiracy thing, but like, there's a lot of people who benefit from people like Joseph Kony in regions that are rich in things that we want. It's like, if you're a corrupt general in Eastern Congo, you don't want oversight. You want these regions that are being taken over by militias and warlords so that you can then, trade the resources in those regions to foreign partners and things. And, it's like, if you're a foreign government, you want access to those things. Like, all the crap in our PlayStations and phones comes from rare earth elements that are in those regions. And it's a lot easier to get those when you don't have to deal with a government that has command and control of those regions and is regulating them,
Right.
And so that stuff I found really fascinating. So I'm still cooking the story, but I think it's probably going to be a sequel to Animals, because there's a character in the book that I think is gonna head there next.
Oh, really? Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, I love those sort of dark underworlds that nobody's explored yet.
Yeah.
In general, I don't like to go places that other writers have been, or retread the same stuff. Like, if I'm doing a war story, I wanted to explore some side of conflict that we've never really explored before.
Makes complete sense. Yeah.
It's too hard to write stuff to feel, unless you're feeling like totally into it from the outset.
I completely get that. And then, you kind of, writing is difficult no matter what. And when you're trying to really go outside, make sure you didn't see something, you're not doing something somebody else did, or in the end, there's people are going to be able to say it's like this or like that anyways. But if you're trying to come from it from an honest point, that's a whole different, thing is what really matters, I think.
Yeah. And it's, for me, it's like each project, it's always like falling in love. Like, you don't know what you're looking for until that thing sort of comes through the door and you're like, oh my God, I never thought that I was going to write about. Like, I never thought about animal tracking or anything. And then it comes and you realize so many things you care about, you can pour into that particular story or something else. It's like, I'm working with an Alaskan Native tribe right now on a project that involves, Inuit mythology. And it's just like this fascinating thing. Like, I never thought that like I'd be cooking up a movie about, Inuit mythology told through the eyes of an 8-year-old Inuit girl set in mythic time. But like, the second I saw it, I was like, oh my God, like all of these things I care about are in this story. And to go into that world, is really exciting to me, So it's easy to get pigeonholed in Hollywood to be, like, oh, you're the guy who did the Call of Duty game. Like, you should do some shooting stuff for us. And that stuff's fun, but it's also nice to feel like you're building different muscles.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but I did want to ask you, there's another credit that you have that's for something that's supposed to be coming out this year called Sweet Girl. What can you tell me about that?
Yeah, so Sweet Girl is a movie starring Jason Momoa, directed by Brian Mendoza. It's at Netflix. It's going to come out later this year. I don't think they've announced the release date. It's a super cool project. It's like, the closest comps would be something like The Fugitive or something like that. It's like a character-driven revenge thriller. It was originally written by Hurwitz and Eisner, who are like great accomplished writers in their own right. It's a movie that, like Without Remorse, I helped out on in my own way, as did a couple other writers. But it was one of these projects where as soon as it was presented to me, I was like, oh, this is a cool one, and one that I feel like hopefully I could help out on and add value. And so did my part, but it's a cool one. I mean, having a movie with Michael B. Jordan and a movie with Jason Momoa, I mean, that was a ton of fun. I mean, those guys are both, incredibly talented, and, talk about getting to partner with people when they're at the top of their game and probably, going up from here. I mean, Jason's great. And then obviously like Michael B. is like, as an actor, is just bananas.
Yeah. No, it's pretty cool. What is there anything else that besides those three things that I might have missed that is kind of on the horizon?
No, on the horizon. Let's see. I've got my TV stuff hasn't been announced yet, and then that Tiger Mafia documentary is going to be coming out that I've been helping out Carl with, that I'm a writer and executive producer on. So that, like, if people want to see the real, raw, unvarnished, what's really going on in the world, it's the real deal. And I mean, there's to be some eye-opening stuff in it. Like, people go to these like tiger petting places in Thailand and never really think about the fact that there are a lot of young tigers and not a lot of old tigers, and that it's possible that they are supporting the trafficking and consumption of wildlife.
Yeah, kind of like what's that other tiger thing?
Tiger King?
Yeah.
It's like it's so funny because I've been working on it for so long, and I saw Tiger King. I was like, oh, that's like all the stuff I was seeing over there, but with more like mullets and dysfunction and stuff. So that's about it for now. I haven't written a game in a while, and I just got the next wave of TV stuff and movie stuff. But
you've written games before. Is that something you're not against, but not necessarily? You'd rather stick to TV and film for right now over it?
Games are cool because it's a totally different type of storytelling. So when I have the right opportunity to do interactive storytelling that creatively makes sense, I do. Like, I actually just this fall worked on a suicide prevention experience for the Air Force, because suicide is one of the leading causes of death for young airmen, right? And so that was like, how do you deal with identifying the it's an Oculus thing, right, for the Air Force. And it was just something that was like, veteran suicide and soldier suicide is something that's very important to me, and like I have a lot of friends in that community that deal with mental health issues, and so that one I did. But like for the bigger video games, it's so much time, and the economics of writing them just don't make a ton of sense when it's like my typical movie deal is 10 to 12 weeks. Modern Warfare 3 I think was like a year and a half, writing in games are incredibly collaborative development, process. So it's like you don't have the same authorial control, and it's not valued the same way as in film. And so it was really fun. I mean, I've loved the games I've worked on, but the right opportunity hasn't come across recently where it made sense for me to like go all in on a certain game.
Gotcha.
It's funny because like I started in film, and then because of the stuff I was doing in film, started doing games and TV and other stuff, and then like games and TV things start getting made, and they're like, oh, you're a game guy who's trying to write movies, and it's like,
right. Yeah, that's the way. I mean, people are fairly narrow-minded, and then there's that whole thing too. Like we were talking about earlier, it's like you work on things, and not everything gets produced, but you're still working on them. It's like you may have one movie or one TV show in X year, and then not until like another 8 years does something actually show up.
It's funny because like in TV, I had written like a pilot every year for the first 10 years of my career, because that's sort of like what you do. And then I'd stop, and I was like, I'm not going to do any more TV stuff. And then after I did the animal trafficking thing, Appy and Wade come back to me and said, hey, we want to do TV. If you could do anything in TV, what would it be? Right. And I was like, I would do adapt Tom Wolfe Spoke the Right Stuff for TV. And then it was like, and then they willed it into being, And so, that was sort of what brought me back into TV, and now it's like more than half my business is TV now. But as you know as well as anybody, it's like the TV landscape has changed dramatically over the last couple of years.
Absolutely, yeah. It's the last 20 odd years of TV has been completely crazy. To see like it just exploded. Because I don't know how old you are, but I'm almost 50, so I go back to the age where there was only like 5 channels at most.
Right.
So I'm a cable kid generation. So for cable then to almost be non-existent because of streaming, it's like, I mean, it's, head exploding. It's insane.
Oh yeah. I mean, I started out the year with a movie at Paramount, a TV show at Nat Geo, and a movie at Netflix. And I ended the year with a movie at Amazon, a movie at Netflix, and a TV show on Disney Plus, It's like the same 3 projects, like, just like, I mean, part of that was COVID, part of that was just like the new world we live in. And so like when I'm, with some of these things, like as you're cooking up the project with your partners, it's like, is this a 2-hour like streaming experience or an 1-hour streaming experience? And you just almost don't even think of it as movies and TV at that point, because it's the same buyer and just a different way of, carving up the story.
Right.
But it's also a great time as a writer, because people are looking for stuff that cuts through the noise, that's loud and exciting and audacious. So, nobody really is looking for that generic procedural anymore. They're looking for like, what's that big, exciting thing, which as a writer is obviously much more where I want to be than like do my...
Well, it's really a creator's paradise right now with the ability. I mean, there are so many things. I mean, now there's going to be Paramount, which is basically CBS All Access, fine, but still, it's still the Paramount thing is going to be a bigger thing than CBS All Access was going to be. So then there's that, there's Amazon, there's Netflix, there's Peacock, there's Apple and Hulu, and I mean, obviously there was one company in the last year that had to go by the wayside, and that was Quibi, but that I think anybody that had any sense knew Quibi wasn't going to make it.
Right. It is funny though, because like every time I sort of go and do the rounds of meetings with companies over the last couple of years, the landscape is so different every time. And it's like, a lot of people, but you're like, wait, what's this company you're at? And then it's like, oh, actually it's the biggest new company doing this thing. And it's like the idea that like these giant tectonic shifts are happening in the industry. And it's like me at my little computer typing all day. I'm totally oblivious to a lot of it. So when I emerge, I'm like, hey, I've got this big idea for a movie. Who should we sell it to? My agent's like, oh, these places. And you're like, oh, I never even heard of that place. And it turns out, they're enormous. I mean, even just like a few years ago, the idea, like of Netflix being a creator of meaningful original content, when you're like, oh, like they're the place where you can find any DVD that ever existed,
Right. Yeah. And then House of Cards changed all that.
Yeah. And it's like the amount of volume that those places are putting out. I mean, it's also great for creators because, they're also not so beholden to, the exact box office numbers and things like that. So there's a little more room to take some bigger swings, some risks, because it's like, you're not like, oh, we have to squeeze every dollar out of opening weekend by making all of the exact precise choices that are engineered for optimizing box office,
Right. Because once it's on for, I guess ever.
Yeah, and they can control, all these services can control how prioritized the show is or not prioritized.
Right.
So much of it show success or failure on those services is just whether the service elects for it to be a success or a failure,
Right, exactly. All right, well, I got one last question and then I'll wrap it up, and I do appreciate you taking the time. This was a pretty fascinating and it was just interesting all the way around. So what advice, seeing as how you've been doing this for 20 years now, what advice would you give to somebody, and then this is not me asking, what advice would you give to somebody starting out and wants to be a writer?
Yeah, I mean, the only advice I would say is that, like, there are all the things that go into being a successful writer, like, the talent, the luck, and all that stuff. And it's like, you only control how hard you work. And it's like, you got to put in the work. And, if you commit to the idea that everything you write will be better than the last thing you wrote, then eventually you'll get there.
Right.
But there really aren't any shortcuts. I mean, I would advise people to look up the ages of all of their favorite writers. And most of them are probably not like somebody who just like fell off the boat in LA and genius. It's somebody who bled and probably sucked for a long time and they got amazing over the years,
Yeah, that's for sure. I think that's excellent advice. Honestly, is that if you want to do it, it's got to be with anything that's. I think with anything, honestly, you have to have a passion for it. Even a regular job, you have to have passion for it, or else it's going to be a complete drag.
Yeah, there's a quote. I think it was Zola. The artist is nothing without the gift, but the gift is nothing without the work. And that quote has always sort of been like one that for me, I'm like, okay, like I can't wait for anything. I have to just keep generating, you know. They may or may not make the animal trafficking movie, but I can write the book. I can do the next thing, you know, and we'll see how it goes, you know. And yeah. So not to go on and on, it was a simple question with a simple answer, but
I completely get. No, I appreciate that. It's. I think it's astute. I think it's, you know, completely on the money. And yeah, I think that's a good place to stop. I mean, this was an awesome conversation. I'm really looking forward to getting the book. So I already got on my wish list. So I'm, you know, I read everything on the Kindle now. So I'll be reading it on a Kindle.
awesome.
And I'll probably get a hardcover. So if I ever come out to LA and or you know, the LA area, and back when we could actually maybe meet, I could have you sign a copy too.
Oh yeah, 100%, Brad. That'd be great.
All right, man. Well, thank you very much, Will. And I appreciate you taking the time, and great success going forward. Hopefully we get to talk again.
All right, thanks for your time, Brad. Have a good one.
All right, you too. Bye.